Here we go.
I pledge allegiance
To
To the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Catherine, would you call the roll, please?
Roger Soltis,
Here.
Phil Corey,
Yes, here.
Dave Dallas, Ken Weiss,
here.
Jennifer Fisher,
Here.
Mike Shabra,
Here.
Stephen Willis, John Thanay,
Here.
Alan Dilly. I just want to let you guys know too, Alan Dilly just let me know that he will be able to attend meetings starting back in June. He's had some work conflicts, so he will be back.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes.
These are the
for-
March 9th minutes, Roger.
Right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes of the March 9th meeting indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Next item is the approval of bills. We had two bills from Dolan and Dolan. One the amount of $61.71, and the second one was $266.42. I have a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Catherine, would you please call the roll?
Roger Soltis,
Yes.
Phil Corey,
Yes.
Ken Weiss,
Yes.
Jennifer Fisher,
Yes.
Mike Shabra,
Yes.
John Thanay.
Yes.
The next item is new business, and first thing is approval of the resolution for the Tellius application.
Mr. Chairman, I did receive some modifications, but those modifications have been incorporated. Excuse me, and I would offer the resolution for your consideration based upon the action that you took at your regular meeting of the 13th of April.
So do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second, somebody?
Second.
Any comments, corrections, or additions? All right, hearing that, Catherine, would you please call the roll?
Roger Soltis,
Yes.
Phil Corey,
Yes.
Ken Weiss,
Yes.
Jennifer Fisher,
Yes.
Mike Shabra,
Yes.
John Thanay.
Yes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is James Contapodius, 121 Upper Kingtown Road, Block 24, Lot 2301. It's for the addition of a storage building. Is the applicant here?
Present.
Do you have any professionals with you?
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, Chris Nazer is here. Is your attorney present tonight?
She is on another meeting. She will be joining if it wraps up early.
Okay, good. If I can, Mr. Chairman, there is a matter of completeness. As you know, the application needs to be deemed complete. You have seen the report from Adam. It is dated the 10th, excuse me, 10th of May, 2022. And on page 3, he has noted that he has reviewed the application and would recommend that the application be deemed complete. If you agree with that, it would appear it would be appropriate, in my opinion, to solicit a motion to deem the application complete. If there's anything I should add, Adam, feel free to do so.
No, I don't believe so. I had indicated that the board had requested that Mr. Contopodious prepare a comprehensive plan for the proposed improvements, including his proposed structure, and he has done that now. So, I agree with what Mr. Thomas has said, that it should be deemed complete.
Hey, does somebody want to make a motion to deem this application complete?
So moved.
I got a second.
Second, it's Ken.
All in favor of deeming the Contopodious application complete, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Mr.
Mr. Contopodious, I assume that you're going to start off or just by giving us some background or not. And if that's true, I'll swear you in. If you want to end up going directly, please just swear him in. It's up to you.
I can give you a little background on the project, just so everybody's aware of, the intent.
Sir, do you swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you be kind enough to state your name, spell your last name for the record, and give us the location of your address, please?
James Contopodious. Address is 121 Upper Kingtown Road, Pittstown, New Jersey, Franklin 08867.
All right. And Mr. Contopodious, as I've indicated, why don't you give us a little background about what you're hoping to accomplish by this application?
Okay. We're on, our property is approximately 9.5 acres. Mostly about 5 acres of that is cleared. And what we're looking to do is put up a 3,000 square foot accessory building for sole purpose of personal use, project cars, storage of lawn equipment and so forth. And obviously that building exceeds the allowable amount size. So it's going to be a concrete base and it's going to be a steel structure. And there's going to be a 4 garage bays, three of which are going to be used for vehicles. One of these is just going to be used for lawn equipment. At the end result, we're looking for the building to have electrical power, no plumbing. You're muted.
With that,
I'm on mute too.
if it would be helpful, excuse me, there are some pictures. I don't know. I mean, I think the pictures kind of speak for themselves in terms of the property, but you have submitted a series of pictures. I don't think we need to mark them because they are already part of your application, but they're accurate. Let me start again. Those are accurate representations of the property generally, as well as the area within which you intend to put the storage or the barn or the structure, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. It's the barn. The storage building is going to be going into a cleared area. There's no trees, no vegetation besides grass.
All right, and that answers the next question, that you're not removing any trees as part of this construction project.
We are not.
Okay. And you've indicated that this is only going to be for your own personal use, for cars, lawnmowers, whatever other personal items you may accumulate while you're there. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. We're hobbyists. We have vehicles that we work on, so that's just for our own personal use.
Okay, and and you understand that if the board is to grant this, this would be for a grant for that purpose and that purpose alone, and that it would not be authorized for use by you or any member of your family, or for that matter, anybody in the future, because this would be a variance. and it would be only utilized for the purpose you've indicated and not for residential or commercial purposes, correct?
Agreed and understood.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, unless anybody, I don't have any other additional questions. Maybe the board members do, and then possibly members of the public.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have 9 acres, I believe you said, and I believe you said 5 acres are cleared. So the rest is wooded, right?
It's wooded, yeah. I don't, that's an approximation. I don't have the exact numbers.
Yeah, we realize that. And the wooded areas are around the back and the sides.
They're pretty much surrounding the entire property. They're in the front of the property and all sides. We're wedging the building in between into a corner at the back of the property, not the back, the top cleared part of the property. The property used to be used for farming, so a bunch of the center of the property is cleared. So we're just utilizing that area.
So there would be really no visibility or very limited visibility to neighbors and off the street, right?
Yeah, we're 100% landlocked. So our driveway is a shared quarter-mile driveway, and the trees would pretty much block it 95%. You might be able to see a glimpse of it through the trees, but really nobody's going to see it. I don't see my neighbors, so.
Any other members of the board have any questions?
Well, remind us again, what's the current permitted square footage from the ordinance?
I don't know it offhand. Was it 1260, 1240?
I thought it was 1,200 square feet, but we can get that information from Mr. Nazar when he gets into testify.
Yeah, so just, well, I know Chris is going to cover this, but it's 1,210 square feet or 90% of the square footage of the principal structure. So that's what the allowance is per the ordinance. So either way, this would exceed that because it's 3,000 square feet.
Yeah, I mean, that, I think we want to, be flexible, but I'm, trying to understand. I don't have the history of what went into that current limit, but doubling it and then some seems to really be kind of make you question just the spirit of the original and the discussion that went into it. And it seems we're pretty far away from that. So I'd be interested to hear more on the size. I mean, we have ordinances where pillars are 6 feet and we allow people to be a little bit outside that for special reasons, but we certainly haven't gone to double or triple in certain variances. And so I'm looking for any history or guidance, or just why be so far from the spirit of that benchmark.
Mr. Cornupedia, maybe I think what the question is being looked for, or the answer is being looked for by Mr. Weiss is, why don't you give a little bit more explanation? You said that you're a hobbyist, that you are going to have 4 garages, 3 of which are going to be cars, one's going to be for lawn equipment. Maybe you can give a little bit more detail as to the kinds of things you intend to be utilizing this barn structure for, which in your mind justifies or requires the need for this size.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So we have a car collection right now. Just where we're at right now, we have 7 vehicles. We're going to have 2 vehicles, possibly up to 4 vehicles parked in the structure. So your standard garage space is about 20 to 25 deep. So every 20 to 25, you're pretty much, we're talking the length. The building's 100 by 30. So about the first 50 feet of the structure is going to be used purely for car storage. And if we just keep on dividing that 100 feet long, the next area we're going to have a work area, if you would. So we're going to have a lift for our car in there. It's electric lift. There's no hydraulics, no underground hydraulics. That's an area to work on the cars. We're gonna have a different space so we can work on the cars on the floor. There's, if any of our hobbyists as a car, there's lots of tools that you need. So brakes for bending metal, things like that. It takes up a lot of space. And ultimately at one corner of the garage, probably gonna have a little wood shop for, not necessarily building furniture, but more like just saws and stuff like that. And then of course, lawn equipment, which is probably gonna take up about 10 to 15 feet of that. So the intent of this, we looked at possibly going with a smaller building, but we felt that we looked at a 50-footer and we realized we were gonna run out of space really quick with what we had. And we felt that let's just come in with one application that's gonna cover our needs for indefinitely, as opposed to coming with multiple applications to expand more buildings. And aesthetically, we figured one building's better than 2 or 3.
Can you tell us, you said that you have 7 cars now, excuse me. Are those cars currently stored on site? And if so, are they outside? Are they off-site? Where are they now?
They're all on site. We got 3 garage bays on the house, which is our everyday cars, and the rest are parked on the driveway.
Okay. And is it your intent, excuse me, to utilize this facility so that the cars, as you can, and are these classic cars or?
Yeah, there's some classic cars. There's, a couple of other regular cars that nobody would call classic, but there are toys.
Okay. And is that what you're looking to then put into the garage so that they're no longer subject to weather and damage in that regard? And also to recognizing you've already said that this is an area that you don't seem to have an awful lot of visibility. Your comment, not mine. You don't see your neighbors much. You don't think there's going to be much visibility. But nonetheless, this is something that keeps the cars not only protected, but also out of sight from the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the cars, nobody sees them where we're located. We're pretty secluded up there. We're on our driveway is a quarter mile. There's 6 houses on the driveway. My one neighbor, the closest neighbor, they don't even see my driveway.
I don't know if that helps your question, Ken.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
Okay.
I understand it. I just can't use the same logic just because no one can see it to say that I would use the same scenario and the same criteria for somebody else down the road who had similar needs. I think going that far above the benchmark doesn't really answer my question. I think standard garage, how deep? 25 by 20?
I'll defer that to Adam. I'm not.
30 by 25 seems to be quite large for a car.
Adam, you're muted, Adam.
A standard parking stall is typically 9 by 18, but that's like in a parking lot.
Right. I think that's, yeah, I think that would be way too small, but
Yeah.
20 by 25 seems to be a pretty sizable garage for a car. I can't get the 3,000. Sorry, I understand the need, the personal need. It just way too big for me.
I guess, Roger, if there's any other questions by board members, otherwise the public.
Yeah, any other board members have any questions? All right, any members of the public have any questions for the applicant?
I see Bruce Doritas has a question. Bruce, if you want to unmute yourself.
Was the impervious ground cover calculated for the dwellings that are on the entire property? And if so, what is it?
Is that something that you're in a position to answer, Mr. Kotopidias, or is that something Mr. Naser is in a better position to answer as the engineer?
To be fair, it's nothing that he testified. I'm not his attorney, but it's not something he testified to, so.
So stop trying to be one, Chris. But the point is, if Mr. Cortopedius can answer it, he can, but if he can't, I certainly would agree to defer it to you.
I will be able to answer that question.
So-
Yeah, I would
so
defer to
Bruce-
Chris.
Bruce, why don't you end up deferring that question to the engineer's testimony?
Okay, fine. Does anyone know the impervious ground cover?
Yeah, I'm sure
the
somebody does.
limitation?
I'm sure somebody does, but we can get that question answered when the engineer speaks. So just hold your question. It's not an inappropriate one. You'll get an answer when Mr. Nazar speaks and or response by Adam Wisniewski.
Okay, thank you.
I see a Mark.
If Mark, if you could, first of all, if you could unmute yourself, please. And
This
if-
is Mark Crock.
If you could, okay, thank you. Just spell your last name, Mr. Kroc, for the record.
KROK.
Your question to Mr. Cortopedius.
Got a couple questions. I was looking over his plans and since the original application, I know he's made a number of changes with regards to water runoff, and that was my initial concern when he first applied for this. And I've seen he's made a lot of progress in that area. But when I'm looking at the plans, and maybe I'm missing something, I see that there's a that the downspout, which I don't know exactly where they're placed. I'm assuming one in each corner at a minimum of the building. And it says that there's it runs to a manhole. I don't see that manhole on the plans, or I'm not sure if I'm missing it. That's one of the questions that I have.
Okay.
And the other main question is on drawing 5, section 2. That detail shows an overflow, basically a pathway for each downspout, meaning if the underground pipe that goes to said manhole gets clogged or filled, water will then, spill out onto the back property. And from what I can read here, and tell me if the engineer can tell me if I'm mistaken, one back corner of the property is that field grade is at 591 feet, 0.65, and then the other end of the building, it's 0.05, roughly about a half-foot slope. And I'm assuming that the slope for overflow would go along the back of the building, then around the short side to that spillway or retention basin.
And what is your question, sir?
Well, is that true? Is the slope set up for that?
And you're absolutely right. That's an engineering question. So
Yes.
just give us a second. Unless there's any other questions of Mr. Cortopedius, we can get to the engineer fairly quickly.
No, like I said, Mr. Cotopedis pretty much, I believe, covered my concerns from the original application. So
Great.
I just want to make sure, like I said, a couple details I didn't understand from the drawings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else.
All right, with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions, then we can have Mr. Nazar testify. Mr. Nazar, do you swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You have been previously sworn in this, or previously testified before this board and have been qualified in civil engineering, have you not?
And planning, yes,
And planning, and your licenses continue to remain in full force and effect, do they not?
they do.
I have no additional questions with regard to his expertise in those areas. Rather than me asking a series of questions, Chris, why don't you proceed ahead? You've heard some of the questions that have been raised, but why don't you end up, I assume you'll take those into account as part of your testimony, and why don't you proceed ahead with explaining the drawings and the plans from an engineering viewpoint?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen here as long as it lets me. And it does. So this is the plan set that was submitted and is available on the website. So I don't remember from I know it's been so long, like a month here. Do you mark this or do you want to just?
No, these are all part of the application, so we don't need to mark them individually.
Okay, excellent. So we're on sheet 1 titled the variance plan of the plan set. This shows the overall property. Again, this is block 24, lot 23.01. It's a 9.43 acre lot, and it's in the AR 7.0 zoning district. The home is located in the western portion of the property. So north being a bit of an angle here, a little bit to the left, not quite page up. So the home is located at the end of this, again, the shared drive that Mr. Contapodias explained is his access is through this shared drive. Have a existing driveway with the 3-car garage on the south side of the house. The house in the rear of the lot, you have the existing septic field. You can see the existing tree line. I'm kind of identifying it and following it with my hand here. This then extends towards the rear of the lot. And then in the back corner here, the back left corner, if you will, so the northeastern corner, you have 50-foot wide JCP&L right of way that goes through the property. This wooded area here is unlike actually most of the other wooded areas in probably most of Franklin Township and the ones that surround, is actually coniferous. So these are evergreens that are in this space. It's not deciduous trees, so it is going to give a screen and provide buffering throughout the entirety of the year. The proposal, as you've already heard, was and is for a 3,000 square foot building located to the southeast of the home. It is tucked behind these trees here, so it's out of sight from not just the home, but any potential view from a neighboring property. That structure is accessed with a grass pave driveway. So similar to the Tellius application where we had done that extension, that one section of the driveway had done with a grass paver system. This is accessed by a grass paver system as well. I think it's appropriate in this case because of the kind of the use. This isn't everyday vehicles that are coming in and out of there. You have vehicles that are necessarily call them hobby vehicles, but collector vehicles, and so you're not bringing them in and out all the time. So this would be appropriate. If this was maybe the main driveway, it would be a little bit more of a concern for the wear and tear of it, but again, it's fairly limited use. To answer the one question before it gets asked again, there is a summary of the impervious coverage on the lot here on this plan, and the existing coverage on the lot is 3.35%, and the proposed is 4.18%. The allowable in the zone is 10%. So we are well within the impervious coverage limits for the zone and this application, less than half of it. Going to the second sheet here, now page 2, the grading and stormwater management plan. We have the stormwater management controls within here, and this has been, I would say, an evolving process where we've worked collaboratively with Adam to make sure that we've satisfied him and the municipal ordinances to come up with a solution that worked for Mr. Contabadias, as well as, again, meeting all the requirements that are needed. The system is, again, a combination of using the grass paver access driveway, which, again, is not an impervious surface. It has a grass surface on it, though it is stabilized underneath. And then routing the proposed garage building into this infiltration basin, which is located to the east of the structure, and then discharging into the remaining portion of this property. Topographically, and I think this goes to the question of the second person asking questions, because I believe that if I'm reading the 200-foot list here on the plan correctly, this is their property. Looking at this topographically, there is a bit of a ridge here, kind of extending from the house going southward, where the water from these improvements runs eastward back towards the right-of-way line and not westward towards that property. In any event, this system has been designed, again, to meet all the township standards, to manage the runoff coming from the garage, so that there is no increase over the existing stormwater that runs off of the property now. To the question about the manhole, as I said, this has been a little bit of an evolving process from a stormwater perspective, and quite frankly, I think that manhole, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that manhole is probably left over from a prior iteration of this plan.
That's possible. I think it might have been labeled as kind of the collector for the roof leader collection system, but I don't know that it's going to be, you wouldn't typically install one of those, like a real concrete manhole for a 6-inch
Right.
pipe, collector pipe for downspouts.
Right. So
yeah.
I wouldn't anticipate that. I anticipate that we'll be removing that from the plan set.
Yep.
Really, in a nutshell, that's what's being proposed. Again, the stormwater's been designed in a manner that is compliant with the township ordinances. The application otherwise meets all of your bulk requirements. Simply, there's a variance that's required for the overall size of the structure, being greater than 1,210 square feet, where the structure is 3,000 square feet. I will note the other part of the standard is that the building needs, that you also can't be greater than 90% of the principal buildings size, and this would comply with that requirement. It is less than 90% of the overall footprint of the principal dwelling. Looking at,
just to clarify that, that's the lesser of the two. So
right, the variance is still required.
Right.
Yes, 100%. And I think importantly, as we move here into planning, that is a cumulative number, if I remember correctly. I believe I do, that all the structures on the property have to be in total less than that 90% number, which is again something that we would meet. So moving into the planning aspects of this application, as I looked at this and I look at this application, there are a number of ways that we could comply. Let's start by saying that this is not a hardship variance that we would be seeking. This would be the better planning alternative, a C2 variance. So looking at what the other options are and why this is better planning to an alternative, how else could we situate this on the property is something that we looked at. Well, number one, we could put it at the end of the driveway in this location and attach it to the house. It becomes part of the principal dwelling. It's just a substantial addition to the principal dwelling, and it fully complies. It's in a more visible location at the front of the property with greater potential for people to see it. It is an area where you have some, albeit man-made, but more significant slopes that would be impacted. And overall, that would comply. But it also closes off that portion of the property and creates a more massive overall structure. Similarly, this could be multiple individual buildings that were less than 1,210 square feet apiece. This could be 3 structures. There's nothing to say that there's nothing in your ordinance that says there's a separation distance that's required between accessory structures. So these could be split into 3 buildings and put 6 inches apart, basically looking exactly how this is today. And that would comply with the ordinance. And so it'd be slightly more costly, more ends to put in, more doors to put in. But it would be, I think, it would be a workaround, but I think it's a poor workaround for, for complying with an ordinance in principle, but ultimately it's just, it's worse for everybody. Looking at the building, I know that one member is concerned about the size of the structure and why is such a large structure needed? And I think you look at it and you understand what the needs are and kind of understanding what would be the purpose of the restriction on, in a general sense, you're trying to avoid having commercial businesses operate on these residential lots. So keeping away from having somebody operating a landscaping business or whatever it may be on their property and just putting in a large accessory structure, which is something that you would want to discourage. The applicant has clearly stated what their intention is. Mr. Contemporaneous, if you would mind telling them what your principal occupation is.
Yeah, I'm a full-time real estate agent, so I am fully aware of using property the way it needs to be and the implications of not. I run into it all the time in the business where people are using structures for the wrong purposes. So I do understand that I got to stay within the rules of the township and laws.
Right, and the point being that it's not that Mr. Contemporaneous runs some sort of business or is in a career where he's likely to suddenly start using this for a commercial purpose. We've agreed as a condition of any approval that it would be restricted to the reasons and the uses that were stated are intended, and avoiding using it for a commercial purpose. The overall size of the structure, I mean, this is Franklin Township, and there are structures far larger than this all over the township. Granted, those are farm structures, they're agricultural buildings. If this property is certainly large enough to be and has open fields and could be farmed, and if Mr. Contemporaneous decided to take up a second career as a farmer, he could put up a building larger than this. Well, I'm not saying you want to. He could put up a barn, store tractors and other agricultural equipment within that building, and it would be permitted under the right to farm to have a structure of that size to support it. And again, this lot is plenty large enough to become, you know, a commercial farm. So I think looking at what the overall restriction is, what the intent of that restriction is to keep the building from the, you know, the massing on the site from an architectural standpoint, having a building that's, you know, one larger than the principal dwelling. That's why you have that 90% restriction, to have that building that's, you know, something larger than the principal building, or to have something that's outsized to the property, some large structure that presents a visual detriment and potentially a compliance issue from the somebody using it for a commercial purpose, would be the reasons that you would want to have an ordinance like that. In this case, this building is very well hidden. I think even with Mr. Contabadias's testimony that, you know, he can't really see his neighbors, the placement and location of this only further amplifies the, I guess hiddenness isn't the word, but it further diminishes, maybe the other way to go, the visibility of this structure by putting it behind these, you know, behind these evergreen trees, making it less easy to be seen. And that would advance, you know, purpose I of the municipal land use law. It would, you know, it's improving the visual environment through creative development techniques. And I think that's what we're doing here, placing it in a location that is tucked and nestled away. Again, with when you look at this and you're doing a balancing with no real negatives to the surrounding community, properties, or really intent or purpose of the master plan and your zoning ordinances. You're managing all of the stormwater on this for this project. I think above and, I mean, to your township ordinance's credit, it's really to a, even though it's a minor project, it's really a major project standard that it gets managed to. You're locating in a way where you can't see it. You're placing appropriate restrictions on the use of that dwelling that would carry with the land. And otherwise, allowing Mr. Contabadias to keep his vehicles inside in a controlled environment, as opposed to keeping equipment outside, keeping the classic cars outside, which I mean, clearly there's a benefit, and the benefit is to Mr. Contabadias. I do understand that, but there's a benefit to keeping those vehicles indoors as opposed to exposed to the elements. You put a lot of time and effort maintaining classic cars. I have one myself, and it is as bad as a boat in a lot of times, in a lot of cases, where it's just a money pit. And, you know, leaving it out to the elements to, you know, only make more work for yourself is really the last thing you want to do. So, you know, on balance here, you know, looking at what the other alternatives are, what it, you know, where we could and how we could accomplish this in a very similar manner without needing the variance. It's my opinion that how we have it proposed and where we have it proposed is ultimately the best solution. You're on mute, Roger.
Would it, unless I've missed it, you're indicating that, well, the vehicles are going to be stored inside, and, you know, that's kind of an enhancement, but wouldn't the argument be stronger? I don't see anything that would give an indication from an architectural viewpoint what this structure is going to look like. Did I just miss it and not get it? Or is there not an architectural proposal as to what the building's going to be? I see a hand sketch that I had received from Catherine indicating the various days and that sort of stuff, but not what I would consider an architectural sketch. And I think that the applicant looks like he prepared that, which is fine, but it doesn't really give any sense of what architecturally it's going to look like and how that fits into the character of this property and or the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that's actually, I don't want to jump back to Jim, but that's a better question for the applicant to answer. I think he knows that answer better than I do, exactly, how the building's going to look, what the construction is, colors, kind of how it fits.
Yeah, and so to answer your question, it's your standard steel building, 14-foot high walls, and the coloring of the building is going to be a tannish color. It's pretty much what you see everywhere when you see a steel building. It's a rectangular building, nothing really out of the ordinary.
So it'd be similar to many of the agricultural buildings that are throughout the township and the county.
I'm trying to see. I might have an image someplace around here, but I'm looking for it.
Well, we haven't submitted it, so I wouldn't bring that up.
Okay.
I have a question for you. To the north side of the proposed building, there's a rectangular shape shown there. That's the septic disposal field, isn't it?
That is correct.
What is that dark heavy line that goes between the roof leader piping, okay, and where that disposal field is? It's coming off the upper right corner, I guess, on the side of the building.
This, Mr. Chairman, this line here,
Yeah,
it's a leader that's just pulled further away for clarity, pointing out the invert of the downspout in that location. So it's just a notation line.
oh, okay.
Roger, this is Phil.
Do you got a
Okay,
question?
Chris, I had a question for you because you said if and I'm not opposed to this because it's 9.5 acres property approximately. The impervious coverage is well within the the acceptable coverage. But I just thought I took exception to what you just said before, is that if you wanted to put up a barn and you want to do a farm, I don't know if he has enough acreage to do a farm on that property right now, because if you take the house, there's a minimum acreage for farming. So I don't know if actually he would be able to be farmland assessed and put up a farm or a barn of any size dimension without any variances or anything like that, because if you had more than the the 9+ acres, I think the minimum acreage for farming is about 7 acres. If I recall, and it looks like there's more than
10 acres.
10. It looks like it's more than the property there. So I just don't want to mislead saying that, well, he can just put up a barn and call it a day.
Well, as I understand it, the minimum is for farmland assessment is 5 acres.
10 acres.
Did they change it to 10 acres?
No, it's been that way.
Because it's always been, you needed an acre for your house, and then, or they gave you an acre for your house, and then if you had 5 acres, you could get that for farmland assessment.
That's
how
my
I
understanding.
understood
It was for 6. I'll defer to.
That's my understanding too.
So I always took it as 6, or I always understood it as 6 because it was 5 acres for the agricultural and then the 1 acre for the homestead. So you need a total of 6 because you need 1 for your homestead that gets carved out, and then the Q farm lot, that is, you need at least 5 acres for the Q farm lot.
Yes,
I actually think it's 5 under cultivation.
Yeah, I just didn't want to basically confuse the two. The question I have is that, and I saw some, I don't know if it's architecturals or the rendering of what the building's gonna look like. There's only gonna be one bay in that, sorry, one door going in from the side, nothing going in from the long side of it. No garage doors on that end. It's gonna be one entrance.
There's gonna be one.
There,
Wait, you can say something, Chris?
I would say they're shown, we have them marked here on the plan, these little rectangles. So
There you
there's
go.
one here on this end, on the north end, as the driveway comes up, and then there's the other three are located on the east side of the building. And then there's a man door in the northeast corner of the, so just a.
Okay, then what was shown on the drawing does not represent this, correct?
I don't have the drawing in front of me to answer that question for you.
Because the architect, I don't know if it's an architectural, but what was done with the drawing of the steel building, it only showed the two sides and didn't show the long side with the other three doors.
Gotcha. So it was showing a flat side and then one door on one end.
Yeah,
Okay, then yes, it was missing the east elevation.
I have two questions. I think earlier it was said there would not be trees removed, but I'm seeing that the driveway goes through where the tree line juts out. Is that,
Yes. Yeah. So there is yes, this area here, there would be some limited tree removal
Well,
for.
Chris, I can speak to that actually. My original intent was the driveway was gonna go around that tree line. But over the past year with the windstorms we had, Mother Nature found a path for me and took all those trees out for me. So there was 3 trees in there that were blocking the way. 2 of them fell and they pretty much ripped apart the 3rd tree. So that was taken down.
okay. My other question is, if this has a use restriction to it, would that carry through specifically for that use to the next property owner? Like if
Yes.
someone purchased the property, it would have to be for car storage and hobby use and whatever else were,
Well, it would be for personal use, Jen. It would
Okay.
not necessarily be
not
for
that
car
specific.
storage, but it
Okay.
would be for personal use and would not be authorized for purposes of either residential use or any kind of commercial use.
Okay.
Couldn't be converted to a house or an apartment or anything like that, and it can't be used for any commercial use.
Any other members of the board have any questions for the engineer?
One question, stormwater management. I see you've, gone to the trouble of preparing a stormwater management plan, and were there calculations associated with that?
Yes.
I just noticed that the Department of Environmental Protection has an online tool now for extreme weather, where they've already done the studies that show that all of the rainfall amounts and intensities that we're currently using in the state of New Jersey are obsolete. So that what you think is a 100-year storm isn't, and a 2-year and so forth. And going forward, the predictions are, the studies have been done and the predictions are that there will be very significant increases with climate change. And so I guess my question is, when you designed this, did you take that into account? And which I think the answer is no, because this is brand new stuff that just came up. But where, if the capacity of that collection facility were exceeded, where would the water go?
So to answer the first part of the question, no, we used the same, we used the data that is publicly available that everybody else does at this time. I do understand, and I got an email today that said expect some changes to the way that we calculate things and the runoff rates that we use, not necessarily the ones for the.
It's actually emergency rulemaking. And
Yeah,
it's expected
is-
within, it's
well, I'm not gonna-
expected within weeks.
Right, and I'm definitely not going to comment on my opinion on using emergency rulemaking in scenarios like that for something that's going to plan out for 2100, but I think I just did. That said, understand that those are, likely coming forward from the state. They're not what the requirement is. That's really for major project, for a major project.
Right.
Application, and this is not a major project, this is a minor project. To the second part of the question, if there is an overflow from that basin, if there is anything that discharges, that is going to discharge, again, as I mentioned earlier, it goes into the rear of the property, through the fields that are there, into the woods behind, towards the where is it, first sheet, towards the power and light easement in the rear.
Thank you.
Any other members of the board have questions for the engineer? All right, I'll open it up to questions from the public. Bruce?
Sir, Bruce, you have to unmute yourself first of all. And if you could just state your name for the record before you ask your question.
Roger, this is Bruce Doritas. I have no further questions.
Okay, then if you don't mind, put your little hand down if you can, if you know how to do that. And
Any other members of the public have any questions? Are we waiting for testimony from anybody else, Roger?
I don't know. I mean, I think the only other person that I was aware of that might be involved is the attorney, and I gather she, or I believe it was she, is tied up in another meeting. So I think we can proceed ahead. If either of you gentlemen would like to make a short, hopefully, summary, feel free to do that. Or if you are happy to rely upon the testimony that has been given, that would be fine too.
Well, if you're hoping somebody to make a short statement, then I guess I'll keep my mouth shut. Jim, I don't know if you want to add any final words.
No, I mean, I feel like we've covered the details needed here. I mean, I just want to reiterate, it's personal use only. Me and my father live here. We're both hobbyists. We have our cars, we have our toys. We just want a place to enjoy the property. That's the intent.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I guess at this point, excuse me, and I apologize, I'm coughing. As Chris knows, I was diagnosed with COVID on Saturday, so I'm getting over that. And I'm surprised I haven't coughed more to bother people, but
Geez, you should have told us so we
applicant
could
is
put our masks on.
Yeah, we should put our masks on.
the applicant is obviously seeking, and you now know that the applicant is seeking a variance for the size of the building. You've heard the fact that it is a building that could either be the lesser of 90% of the main building, or in this case, 1,210 square feet. It has been represented by Mr. Nazar that if in fact there was not the issue of, quote, the lesser of, they would be in a position to have met the standard. However, that's not your standard. Your standard is the lesser of, and therefore they are in requirement of a variance. They have stipulated that the building is going to be used for personal use. You've heard the nature of the personal use. It will not be utilized, and I would recommend, if this is going to be approved, that there be a condition that runs with the land, and that there be in my opinion, there should be a deed restriction on the property to recognize this, because sometimes a resolution doesn't necessarily get recorded and filed, and it becomes somewhat lost in the shuffle. If it's recorded in the clerk's office, then everybody knows what they're getting when they attempt to buy the building, if in fact it gets sold at some point. So therefore, it would have to be a deed restriction with regard to not using this building for any additional residential or commercial purpose. The question is whether or not they have met the standard. It has been indicated that the negative standard is that no one can really see it. That it is a situation where if they and there's plenty of trees around. It also indicated that under the C2 standard that there are alternatives, which they've indicated, one of which would be, excuse me, to simply attach it to the structure, and therefore it would not require any variance. That would mean that it would be a rather large house, which may or may not be in the best interest of the neighborhood. That would be obviously something that you folks would have to consider. The other alternative is that they could end up separating the buildings into not just the one, but 3 buildings of, let's say, 1,200 feet. They would be separated by whatever distance there are. And again, that would not require any variance. They have chosen to do it this way, which then requires the variance. And I would assume that's based upon, in fairness, it wasn't stated. It probably is based upon some level of convenience on the part of the applicant. But the fact of the matter is the same building, same square footage could be placed on the property by using alternative methods. It has been testified by Mr. Nazer in his professional opinion as a planner that those options are not particularly helpful and are appropriate from a planning viewpoint, and that this arrangement is one that makes more sense because it presents the building in a location that is less visible, even though it's been stated by the applicant that there's not much visibility to the property anyway, but it is less visible. It is a situation where it doesn't have the same massing effect as having one large building if it was attached to the house. And I apologize, I probably have been pronouncing your name incorrectly, so I'm going to say James has indicated that he's going to have the steel building, tan color. I don't know if the board feels as though some additional restrictions in terms of coloration. I know there was a discussion, not in particular with regard to this application, as to whether or not appearance makes a difference, but there has been proffer by Mr. Nazer that purpose I of the municipal land use law is in fact being advanced, which is the visual improvement excuse me, I believe somebody, and I'm not sure if it's Ms. Dagnall, is the one that has noise coming, but if everybody else could mute themselves, that would be helpful. So that, anyway, so it's up to the board. If you feel as though the positive and the negative criteria have been met based upon the testimony, then you have the responsibility to grant the variance with the condition at minimum that I have suggested. And I also note that in Adam's report, excuse me, on page 4, he also is indicating 3 additional conditions, which you've all read, but just for the record, that includes the Warren County Soil Conservation District, that there would also be a requirement for inspections with regard to the detention, the infiltration facility, and the grass pavers, as well as an as-built drawing. So those would be the conditions if there is going to be an approval.
All right, I want a motion to close the meeting to the public.
And Mr. Chairman, again, I do this all the time with a D variance, because I think D variances can be confusing because you have to have 5 affirmative votes. This is a C variance. This does not require 5 affirmative votes, but just simply a majority of those present tonight, because this is the first and only hearing that is taking place. That having been said, I do find, however, that in my experience, it is usually better, not because I am suggesting this should be approved, but just from a procedural viewpoint, to solicit a motion to approve the variance. That way, there's no confusion by members of the board or members of the public that if in fact there is a motion to approve and a member votes yes, he or she is voting in favor of that variance. And if that member votes no, that member is voting against the variance. So therefore, I would request, Mr. Chairman, that you solicit a motion with the conditions that I've elicited, unless the mover has any additional conditions.
So Roger, this is a C variance, you're saying, not a D variance. So I
It
can
is a
still
C
vote.
variance,
Okay,
it's not a D
Okay.
variance. You have every right to
okay,
participate,
no problem. Thank
and it does not require the supermajority of 5 affirmative votes. It's just simple majority.
Okay, I'd like a motion to close the meeting to the public.
So move.
We have a second.
Second,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve this application?
I'll make the motion to approve the application with the conditions as noted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion now. One of the things that I think we seen on there was the issue of that manhole on a drawing. I think we need to have that corrected, and any other things that are not supposed to be on these drawings, please have removed, and we would like a final copy of drawings, corrected drawings.
That's a very good condition. I forgot that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Roger, that includes the architecturals or the rendering of what the building's gonna look like, correct?
Yeah, we can ask for that, sure.
Just for the record. Right?
Right.
Because
just-
otherwise it should be part of the public hearing.
Anybody else? All right, hearing nothing, would you call a roll, Catherine?
Okay. Roger Soltis,
Yes.
Ken Weiss,
no,
Phil Corey,
Yes,
Mike Shabra,
Yes,
Jennifer Fisher,
Yes,
Jonathan A.
Yes.
The motion carries. Jim, your project has been approved. There will be, as I'm sure Chris will advise you, there will be a resolution of memorialization that will be prepared. I believe what I'll do is send it to your attorney if that's what you want, or I can send it to Chris. Either way, it's up to you. And
I would
then,
send it through Kara.
Send it to
Okay.
Kara, please, yeah.
that's fine. And then it will be, if there's any comments or concerns about that, let us know, let me know. And then it will hopefully be approved at the June meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good night.
Good luck.
Good night, James.
Night.
Hey, our next item on the agenda, which I just. I got too many papers in front of me. All right, the next item on the agenda is. I don't have the right agenda. It's.
I have it if you want, Roger.
Yeah, please, could you read it? 'Cause I
Of course. Township
Okay.
of Franklin, 204 and 206 Sydney Road, Block 16, lots 41 and 42. Applicant is the owner of the subject parcels, which were previously developed as single-family residential properties. The prior dwellings and improvements have been removed from the property, and the lots are currently vacant. The existing lots are undersized as they are located in a minimum 5-acre zone. The proposal is to merge the properties in question to make them more in conformance with the code, and to obtain variances to permit further development of the merged lot into a single family residential property. No improvements are proposed on the lots at this time. Due to the size of the proposed merged lot, the applicant requires certain C variance relief.
I found it, but who's representing the town on this?
I think Adam is going to be doing that.
That's me.
Okay, that being said, Phil, at this point, you are now recused because this is the township property, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know, are you going to be testifying or is it just going to be Adam?
I can give a little background as to what we're looking to do and why we're doing this, if that's what you
Okay,
want.
all right. So it's obviously it's up to you, but I just wanted to be clear, either way, you're still going to be recused from testifying. So that having been said, Mr. Corey, do you swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And would you be kind enough to state your name, spell your last name, and the location of your professional offices, please, for the record?
Okay, it's Philip Corey, Koury. And you want the township office in, Roger?
I think that's probably the best.
Okay, Catherine, what is that, 202?
202 Sydney Road.
Sydney Road.
Okay. And briefly, if you could just explain what it is that you're trying to accomplish by this application.
You're muted.
Sorry, I hit the button. These are the two properties adjacent to the municipal building. They were purchased years ago from the by previous committees. We thought that they were purchased using COA funds. Upon research, we found out that they were not purchased with COA funds, and there was no need to maintain, keep those properties in township, since we are relocating the current municipal building to the new municipal building. And we're just trying to reduce the amount of properties that the township owns and has to maintain. It was determined from the committee to merge these two lots into a, even though we really don't have to merge them, we thought it would be easier to merge them to become closer to conforming in the current zone. Being that there were two houses there prior, we can sell these as one lot, and it'll be more advantageous to try and have a house built on those properties, for that property. Am I anything else, Adam? I think that was the gist of everything.
That's the general overview. I have, I can go through with the board the details of the history of the project, of the properties and everything, just to give the board and the public a full background, the history of the properties, when the houses were demolished and all that, but we can get into that, but I think that covers it so far.
Okay, Adam, we'll get into cross-examination maybe by members of the board and members of the public. But why don't we get, Adam, your testimony now? Do you swear testimony that you're about to give will be the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And state your name and spell your last name and the location of your offices for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Adam Wisniewski. That's Wisniewski. And I'm representing the board as the township engineer, or I'm sorry, representing the committee as the township engineer in support of this application for a minor subdivision with variances. And well, to go back, I'm employed by Colliers Engineering and Design, and we are located at 53 Frontage Road, Hampton, New Jersey.
And you have been a licensed engineer for how long?
A licensed engineer, 11 years.
Okay. And in fact, you have been representing Franklin Township for how many years?
I think we're approaching 3 years now.
Okay.
In Franklin, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And you have represented other towns and have testified in front of other boards throughout the state. Is that also correct?
Yes, I have multiple boards in both Warren County, Somerset County, and Hunterdon County, as well as in Bucks County in Pennsylvania.
And in each of those cases, you've been accepted as far as your professional credentials have been, and your license remains in full force and effect, correct?
Correct, yes.
All of that having been said, it would appear as though there's no issue with regard to your qualifications. So therefore, why don't you go ahead and explain what you feel is necessary in terms of this application?
Sure, of course. Thank you. Okay, for the benefit of the board and the public, I'll put up the the plan that we submitted and prepared. And actually, before we do that, Roger, just for formality's sake, I guess, the board should consider the completeness of the application. In my opinion, I guess in this case, as the committee's engineer, I feel that the application and the plan that was submitted could be considered complete. But of course, if the
You're
board
absolutely
members
right.
have any questions, I can answer those questions.
Yeah, I do agree that that should be done, Mr. Chairman. I do think that it's fair to say that based upon the information that's been presented, while I am not an engineer, it does appear as though it's sufficient for me to review, and I think it's more than sufficient for the members of the public as well as board members to review. And I would therefore, from a legal viewpoint, suggest that the application could be deemed complete. Thank you.
All right, in that case, I'd like a motion to deem this application complete.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Roger, I'm recusing or abstaining. I don't know what the.
Yes, you are recused for purposes of discussion
Okay.
as well as voting.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll be putting up the plan here for everyone's benefit. Okay. So on your screens now, you should see the plan that was submitted to the board on behalf of the application. And just to review, these are the properties adjacent to the current municipal building location. The former addresses of the homes that were located at these properties was 204 and 206 Sydney Road. These were formerly two single-family residential lots, which included homes, driveways, wells, and septic systems. To give the public and the board a history, both of these lots are currently owned by the township, as the mayor had indicated. And the combined lot area of the two lots is going to be 1.9 acres following their merger. And lot 41 currently consists of 1.06 acres, and lot 42 consists of 0.83 roughly acres. So following their merger, it'll be just under 2 acres. As we mentioned, the property is currently undeveloped and really currently just includes maintained lawn that the township's maintaining, and I guess the trees at the rear of the property and a few isolated trees throughout the property, and those are identified on the plan individually. To give a history, the township purchased the properties in September 2008 for lot 41 and October 2009, lot 42. The prior improvements were demolished based on records that we had at the township. The improvements were demolished. The homes, septic systems, and wells were demolished in August of 2013. The wells were abandoned and capped with concrete plugs, and all those, the septic systems were removed and the tanks were crushed and filled in place. And all those records are on file with the county health department, which we also do have on file. And just for matters of zoning, the lots are both located within the township's RR5 rural residential 5-acre minimum lot size district. And so they're currently undersized as individual lots, and merged will also be undersized. And sort of the nature of the properties along Sydney Road, they are sort of smaller properties, which I'll speak to later when I give some information about the variances that are being requested. Now, as far as the proposal for the properties currently, as the mayor had indicated, the intention is to sort of put these properties that are on the township kind of rolls back into productive use and make them into return them to single-family residential use. But rather than have two homes there, the proposal is to create a single or one single-family residential property that could be sold. And given the lack of property and the lack of housing stock we're all aware of, that would be a very productive use of this currently vacant lot. And to speak to some investigation that's been done on the property, in support of the application and in support of the preparation of the variance plan, the township engaged a local engineering firm that prepares septic plans, which we do not. So we had Bayer Reese Engineering on site to do soil testing at multiple locations to identify areas for future septic installation that would be built as part of a single family residential property and structure. And we did identify multiple locations on the property where, a principal septic system and a secondary or reserve area could be identified in the future when, a plan is prepared for development. This plan and application does not include any proposal for a home site, a septic system, a driveway, a well. All that would be left to a future purchaser of the property, with which the variances which are being sought would follow with the property upon sale. And the lot would be sold with a passing septic evaluation, which is on file with the county, and we have records of that testing, which was done late last year, I believe, in October. Yes, end of October. So that's sort of the beginning here. The reason the application is before the board and the township has appeared before the land use board is to seek multiple bulk variances specifically related to the minimum lot area. That's where, of course, the minimum lot size is 5 acres and we're at 1.9 acres. So we're 3 acres short of the minimum lot size. Lot width, lot depth, front, rear, and side yard setbacks, and also maximum impervious coverage. So that's sort of an overview of the project from an engineering perspective. And I will speak to the variances, but I guess see if any board members have any questions at this time. And then I can continue with the variance discussion.
Yeah, could you just show us on there where the 2 existing lots are?
Oh, sure, of course. So, Mr. Chairman and the board members, you can see this is the outside boundary that I'm sort of tracing with my mouse. I'm assuming you can see that. And then the central line that kind of is this broken dashed line, that's a property line. And as I'm zooming in, I have this labeled the property line to be removed. So that central lot line will be removed upon the merger of the lots. So that's kind of the dividing line currently.
Okay, so Sydney Road is off to the right side.
Correct, yes. This is north up, and the municipal building is the property directly to the north.
Right. And what will be the overall dimensions of the merged lots?
Sure.
Width and depth.
Right. So the width of the merged lot will be 250 feet. And the depth of the merged lot will be 331.1 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, 250 feet is about what the old 3 acre lots were roughly.
I have a question. Since this is adjacent to a lot also owned by the town, which is where the current town hall is, what's the status of that? What is that? What is the town hall lot zoned for? And do we have any idea what's going to happen to that lot?
I can speak to the zoning. I'm pulling up the zoning map here.
Yep.
The zoning is also an RR5, 5 acre zoning, rural
Yep.
residential. The status, I mean, that would be something that the mayor could hopefully speak to in terms of the future status. I know the police are still situated at that building.
Right.
and-
I suspect that might be up in the air still.
Correct.
And how big is that lot?
Well, let me see if I have to pull up the tax maps here. I don't have that right in front of me.
Not, the exact amount doesn't matter, but where I'm going with this is that in almost every other situation where a person owns two adjoining lots and they don't meet the zoning, it's not unusual to extinguish the division between them to get closer to meeting the minimum lot size. So my question here is, why wouldn't we combine the lot that the town hall is on with these two to get as close as possible to 5 acres?
That would, I mean, I can't speak to the intention of the board, of the committee on retaining that building, but I guess to make it into a residential property, you'd have to knock down the existing municipal building. And I don't know if that's a realistic objective.
So I would think that that's an important question to be answered by the town to justify. I think it's great to merge these two lots and make them into one. I mean, that's just getting closer to, you know, where we want it to be.
Mhm.
But I think we also do have to consider, you know, maybe the time frame of how long we need to use the municipal building for some purpose, perhaps for the police. And, you know, it might be that that's such a long time that this is totally justified.
Perhaps the mayor could speak to that. I mean, I think he could provide, unless I'm incorrect, I think he could provide testimony on the application, just not vote on it.
Right.
Right.
John, we were just looking at having this lot done because we don't have any estimation as to, I mean, we do have a time frame of trying to be in the new building, but we wanted to try and basically make these two lots as one to sell them off, and then possibly down the road, we don't, you know, whatever the committee wants to do with the current municipal building lot and building. If I had a vote, I would not knock down that building and make this one lot, because that's not the intent. Again, that's me speaking as a committee person on that. So
Well,
we were
is it-
looking. Sorry.
Phil, is it safe to say that there might be, the committee might have some idea that they could use that, continue to use that facility for something?
Yeah, we can. I mean,
In the
you know,
future.
yeah, the purpose of the purpose of the purchase of the church property on Lower Lansdowne was for a new municipal building. Again, it's not going to be my intention to keep the current municipal building in use as a municipal building. But then again, you know, you don't know when we're going to be in, and what other committees are going to look for at that current site for the current municipal building. So I'm just trying to consolidate the properties that the municipality has, and for purposes of cost savings, to see if there's anything we can try and do to minimize the expenses that the township incurs, you know, by trying to spin off or basically dispose of properties that basically aren't maintained. They don't have to be maintained anymore from the municipality. You know, there was another site that we were looking at, but it's a wooded site. And there's a couple of other sites. Because, you know, with the current, with the new municipal building site, we just sold, and it was just approved, approximately 12 plus acres was sold to the county. And so we're trying to maximize the efficiencies that we have as a municipality. If we were looking to try and sell the two sites and as merged into one, and potentially down the road sell the other municipal building, for, you know, someone can use that as an office or whatever like that, whatever they need. It's going to be pre-existing non-conforming.
Thank you.
Again, I'm only one committee person speaking. I have one vote. There are 4 others that have a vote on that also.
Mhm.
And John, just to answer your question, the current municipal building lot is 1.9 acres according to the tax maps. So,
Thank you.
Okay.
Adam, just so that I understand, obviously you're looking for the variance with regard to lot size. And you're anticipating that whatever building is going to be up, I guess you're making an anticipation to make it easier to sell. You're also seeking lot width, depth, frontage, rear, side, and impervious coverage.
Correct. So I can speak to those,
Please.
Roger. So, correct. So some of those variances are sort of existing nonconformities that are kind of come from the fact that they're undersized lots. So the existing lots are nonconforming in depth and width and lot area. And the proposed lot will also be nonconforming in depth, width, and lot area. So just to give a graphic representation of that, the current lots, have lot widths of 140 feet for lot 41, and 110 feet for lot 42. The merged lot will have a lot width of 250 feet, while a 5-acre lot would have a minimum required width of 350 feet. So unless we can add more acreage, we're never really going to get that
Yeah,
width.
I see what you're saying now. I'd forgotten about, given the fact that it's 5 acres and you are still dealing with a relatively small lot. Got it. Okay.
Right, unless we had a really long lot that had a lot of frontage, then we'd still not meet the depth. And in a similar situation, we have the same situation with lot depth. The lots existing are 331.1 feet, and the proposed will be the same. Again, non-conforming with the 350-foot minimum depth. And in terms of the setbacks, to first speak to the side rear setbacks as well as the maximum impervious coverage, though there isn't currently a home on this property, there are allowances in the township ordinance, specifically, I had it written down here, section 220-50D, which allows for non-conforming uses in lots and specific to various sizes of non-conformity. And likely that was, when the 5-acre and 7-acre zones were adopted, there were some carve-outs made in the ordinance to allow single-family residential primarily structures to remain conforming based on their lot size. So in this case, the request is for a lot that's 1 to 2 acres. The allowance in the ordinance, which I have on the plan as well, the allowance in the ordinance is a minimum side yard and rear yard setback of 30 feet and a lot coverage of 25%. So that is the relief that's being requested. That's in line with the current ordinance for a lot under 2 acres. So that's what's being requested here. Nothing in, it's not in any, we're not asking for any additional relief. It's just, we're asking for what's allowed already in the ordinance. Just that ordinance specifically doesn't apply to this lot because there isn't a home on it right now. So that's sort of that request. And the final request is sort of and I'm not a planner, so I'm just making that case known, but based on my understanding of planning, and this would be a C2 variance, in that the front yard setback is sort of unique in that there is no allowance for undersized lots and non-conforming lots with regards to front yard setback. And what I did was, to sort of follow the line of trying to not alter the current plan of the zone and kind of stay in harmony with the surrounding properties. I had to kind of analyze the nearby 13 properties and to see what the front yard setbacks were for the surrounding lots, which are also non-conforming. And the surrounding nearest 13 properties, which take direct access to Sydney Road, range from 0.43 acres to 1.63 acres in lot size. So this lot, once merged, will be slightly larger than that, but individually the individual lots do fall within that range. And the existing residential properties have front yard setbacks from 54 feet to 85 feet. And what's being requested now, and looking at those 13 properties, the average front yard setback is currently 72.6 feet. If you look at all the nearby residential properties on Sydney, that are close to this property and close to the municipal building. So what we are requesting here, which I think is reasonable, it's in the higher end of the setback range. We're requesting a 75-foot front yard setback be permitted as part of this minor subdivision and variance request. And that would just allow for a larger flexibility in developing the lot for someone to construct a single family home on the property. And to speak to that, I kind of showed what the building envelope would be. And of course, this is, goes straight to the marketability of the property. If you have a larger building area, doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a larger building on it because you're still restricted to lot coverage, but it just gives someone more flexibility in terms of where they wanted to site their home or their garage, or, where they wanted to be able to place it on the property and still stay within kind of the spirit of the neighborhood of these homes that front Sydney Road directly on these smaller lots. So, if you kind of look at it more closely, this larger area here sticks to that 30-foot side and rear yard setback, the 75-foot front yard. And the smaller envelope strictly sticks to the 5 RR5 setbacks of 50 side and rear and 150 front. So it significantly reduces your buildable area on the lot if you strictly apply the 5-acre setbacks. So that's sort of the intention behind the variance requests. So I think that
So really what you're saying that if you were a planner, you'd be talking about the fact that you're trying to say that this new lot would be really in conformance with the character of the neighborhood.
correct.
And therefore there would be no particular negative impacts of any substantial kind, either in terms of surrounding properties or with regard to the zone plan and zoning ordinance, because you've already explained that you're attempting to follow as best you can both the zoning ordinance and the zone plan where applicable, and you're not overbearing that process. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
I don't have any other.
I think that's all I have with direct testimony.
One question on the impervious coverage,
Yes.
which is being proposed at 25% or a quarter of the property. Now, I know the zone is 10%, but at 25%, that would allow approximately the same amount of development on this small lot as you would normally allow on a 5-acre lot. It'd be over 20,000 square feet of coverage. So I know some of the houses along that road. And I don't think I know they're on smaller lots. They certainly don't have anything like 20,000 square feet of coverage.
I see. Yeah.
But John, what was approved, and I'm just using past history, what was approved on a previous application that we just memorialized was approximately 30% impervious coverage on a much smaller lot, correct?
That is true. That
Okay,
is true.
so it's,
For lots of reasons. Yeah.
Right. Well, that was, yeah, and that, I understand, John, the concern, but, this lot coverage amount is in line with the current ordinance for non-conforming lots.
Okay.
So we're not asking for anything additional, I'm definitely not requesting, 50% coverage or anything like that.
No, just trying to get the reason out.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Adam, by the way, does this lot have a similar situation as the lot that was approved recently in terms of, the fact that the county's not accepting the impervious coverage, even though it runs into the middle of Sydney Road?
Right. So yeah, that does factor into that,
Okay.
which maybe addresses John's concern a little bit more. Given the discussions that occurred at that meeting, I took that into account. So if we look at the current lot coverage, the proposed lot coverage will have to take into account the lot coverage that is on Sydney Road within the pavement of the roadway. I don't have that number in front of me here.
But it's the same cut.
But it should be
But it's the same
250
concept.
feet by what, 20 feet or something? Or
Right.
10 feet?
Yeah, it's the same concept. So when, whenever we get in the future, if someone comes before the zoning officer and ultimately to me with a grading and stormwater plan, they'll have to prepare a stormwater plan for their site. They'll have to prepare, some sort of rain garden, dry well infiltration structure, and their impervious calculations will have to take into account the impervious coverage in Sydney Road. So that would further sort of reduce the ultimate future disturbance and development of the lot.
I have another
Not
question.
related, oh, sorry, not related to the subdivision we're contemplating, but I do believe there's a pretty big tree on this site that I'm sure the Environmental Commission would be interested in preserving. But I haven't visited it to see it, but it did come up at our meeting.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there are trees, individual trees identified. There's a 60-inch tree.
Yep.
I can't speak to the health of the tree. I know I've seen there are some nice trees there. There's a 60-inch tree. There's a few kind of 10 inchers, 12 inchers. I think there's a 48-inch tree somewhere as well. A 30-inch tree. 42-inch tree closer to outside of the building envelope, actually, which is good. But yeah, so there's probably a few sort of potentially, depending on their health, specimen trees, which might warrant
Something at
attention.
site plan.
Right.
And I must say, this has nothing to do with the subdivision either. But
No,
this is the only time I've ever heard in a lot of years of practicing, the county doesn't accept the right of way. What is that about?
Usually they're begging to take it from you.
Not really begging, they're insisting, and
Yeah.
they're taking it. They're not just simply saying we're going to buy it.
Yeah.
That in order for you to get the approval, we're taking that right of way.
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy. Anyway, that you don't have. It just struck me as being strange. That's all.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
nothing.
that was the question I was going to get to. Does the county have a right of way on that road for future widening?
And there is a right of way identified. There's a 16.5-foot half width.
And that would be into the two lots there, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, so-
actually zooming into that area that our surveyors identified. So they located the right of way.
Yeah, so right,
So there is some.
so that's really another reason to ask for that additional impervious coverage, because if they ever decide to widen that road and take some of that, that'll impact again, what's happening with the lot with the coverage.
Right. And I think it's helpful just to speak to the impervious coverage concerns. It's helpful that the township has, an ordinance on the books that requires stormwater management for development of single-family homes. So it sort of throttles people's desires to fully pave a lot when you tell them they have to put in giant dry wells in the ground and everything else. They'll sort of maybe scale back their ambitions in terms of like paving a lot or putting a giant building on it if they're also having to bury, $40,000 of dry wells in the ground to address stormwater. Maybe they'll put in a bit of a smaller house, or maybe, approach their development more gingerly. So.
All right, any other members have questions for Adam? All right, do any members of the public have any questions for the?
Roger, Mike Schaber had his hand up before. I don't know if you wanted to explain anything.
Oh, I can't see that. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, that's why I said Mike Shabra, he had a question. I don't know if Mike, if you still have a question.
No, I just wanted to note that it seemed like the majority of the properties on the tax map were in the 1 to 1.5 acre range. So it seemed like it would be in keeping with the similarly sized properties.
Yeah. Thank you. Bruce Doritas also has a question. He's a member of the public.
Bruce?
Yes, my concern is, has a tank sweep been done? If if it's appropriate?
Yeah, I can actually speak to that, Mr. Doritas. We have records from the county, which I don't have pulled up here in front of me, but there were some underground storage tanks removed and properly closed out. And those were closed out back when the buildings were demolished. I wasn't involved, back then. This was back in 2012, 2013. But to my knowledge, yes, the property was swept and checked for those types of underground storage tanks, and they were removed and closed out.
Okay, and all the documents have been represented?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, the township was by the book when they demolished the site, so we have records on everything.
Okay, yeah, my concern was just the liability.
Yeah, of course.
Moving forward.
Sure.
Thank you.
Catherine, anybody else from the public?
No, nobody.
Okay, is there any more testimony on your part, Adam, or anybody else from the town?
I don't have any more unless the mayor would like to speak to anything.
Nope, I have nothing. Thanks.
With that, Mr. Chairman, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It would appear as though the applicant is looking for, they're talking about a minor subdivision, but in actuality, it's a merger. And, we can call it a minor subdivision. I'm not sure technically that it is, but that's neither here nor there. The real issue here is, excuse me, the variances, and you've now heard that they are talking about lot area, lot width, lot depth, frontage, side, rear, and impervious coverage. And you've heard the reasons and rationales for each of them. I don't have to reiterate them, but it is a situation where you're dealing with, again, another Sydney Road situation where part of the impervious coverage is really roadway, and they're being burdened by that, and yet the county does not wish to accept it. So therefore, it becomes a burden on the lot. There's also the fact that there's been testimony that there's been at least a survey done by Adam, and he's indicated that there is in the area lots that are generally of the similar or smaller size. And as a result, this merger would create a lot that would be certainly within the character, at least his opinion, certainly within the character of the area in which it's found. It also appears as though they are suggesting that there's no negative impact on the basis that there's no substantial adverse impact to surrounding properties because they are all essentially similarly situated. And the idea is that there's no substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan of the zoning ordinance because of the fact that, excuse me, because of the fact that they are attempting to try to follow the ordinance provisions for the RR5 ordinance where possible, for undersized lots, and also taking into account the general character of the area with regard to the other variances, and also recognizing that there are certain non-conformities that whether you merge the lots or not, they are still going to exist, and therefore there's sort of an impossibility to get rid of in terms of modification. And as a result, I guess the argument would be that the failure to grant those would render this lot essentially unusable. So it is my understanding for all those reasons they are saying that they have met both the positive and the negative criteria. And if you find that that is the case, then an approval with regard to the variance application and the merger should be forthcoming. In this particular case, other than the fact that there have to be an appropriate deed file with the meets and bounds description of the new lot, excuse me, and I'm just thinking out loud, it would seem to me that the resolution should also be attached to the new deed to indicate what the variance grants were, so that there's no confusion in terms of a future buyer, so that buyer will have actual notice by the county clerk's office. So I think it is appropriate to not only have a new deed, which for obvious reasons, but also to have attached to that deed the resolution memorialization indicating what in fact was granted by way of variance. So those are the only conditions I would recommend.
Okay. I'd like a motion to close the meeting to the public.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
No. You need to do a roll
Aye.
call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Roll call, Catherine.
Roger Soltis,
Yes.
Phil Corey.
Nope, Phil.
Oh, sorry, he's abstained.
No,
Yep.
he's
Ken
abstaining.
Weiss,
Yes.
Jennifer Fisher,
Yes,
Mike Shabra,
Yes.
Jonathan A.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, gentlemen. And you too, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of the Franklin Township. Thank you.
There you go.
Anybody have any comments on this before we vote? I think that this is the right thing to do because it's while the proposed lot's not going to be conforming for the zoning in the area, it's certainly going to be better, which in terms of, you know, a possible second septic system, and sometime in the future, there's going to be more room there.
I think the board, unless I'm mistaken, excuse me, I think the board just voted in favor of the application.
No, that was to close
No,
the
that was
meeting
the-
to the public.
Oh, I misunderstood. Then we do need a motion to approve the application for the variances that have been requested, which I don't know that I need to outline again.
Right, we're going to follow the same
Yep.
rules of yes means it's
Yes.
approved.
Correct.
Okay, so before we let's get the motion on the table and then we can decide if we want to put any comments in. So somebody want to make a motion to approve, and approve means that a yes vote would mean that we approve the merger of two lots.
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Ken Weiss?
Yeah, Ken.
Okay, sorry, Ken.
Okay. So before we take the vote now, does anybody have any comments other than what the ones I just made?
No, I think it was a good move. Appreciate the effort.
Makes sense.
Right, and you know, the other thing too, if in the future, you know, they decide that the lot that the current municipal building sits on is sold, it's going to be almost a twin of the one we would be creating with this vote today.
Correct.
So, you know, I think, you know, and if those two were joined, then it would be sort of out of line with the rest of the lots in the neighborhood. So I think this is probably a better move.
Yeah, I
Anybody-
think that was well said.
Yeah, anybody else have any comments? Okay,
I don't see
Catherine.
any.
All right, Catherine, you want to call the roll in?
Yep. Roger Soltis,
Yes.
Ken Weiss,
Yes.
Jennifer Fisher,
yes,
Mike Shabra,
Yes.
Jonathan A.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is old business. Catherine, what do we have on the in the works right now?
The only other thing we have is the solar farm. I have not heard from them. However, I will follow up with them. That's it.
And we have Yum and Chill on.
Oh, Yum and Chill, I'm so sorry. Yum and
Or-
Chill, they are on for the next meeting, the Wendy's application for over in the ShopRite
Right.
area.
Oh, okay, let me just address the board. When I found out about this, you know, there's a number of eateries and restaurants and you know, places that will use more water than normal, okay? And anyway, I remembered, my memory told me that sometime in the past, there was a limit put on a number of eateries or restaurants that they could have up in that shopping center. And, and so Catherine dug into it a little bit and found out that back in the late 80s, when the second and third levels in that shopping center were approved, there was a limit put on the number of eateries, but apparently it was rescinded at some few, you know, like back, what, in the 90s, was it?
Yeah, it was rescinded. It was, the resolution was in 1988, I believe, and then it was rescinded in 1996, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess what we're doing is because of the water and sewer issues there, we asked Adam to tell them that they need to have a discussion with the people in Clinton and bring us something to show that that wouldn't be a problem if they opened up another eatery up there.
Right.
And Catherine, could you do me a favor and please send me a copy of those two resolutions? I like to take a look at it because you know, I remembered the first one. I was surprised when you told me about the second one because
Yeah, I was surprised myself when I found it.
yeah. So
Okay.
if you can do that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so we have that on the agenda for next month. Anybody else have anything they want to add or discuss?
No.
Oh, I just one other thing. This is really not related to any board business, but I guess a couple of weeks ago there was an article in, I'm not sure, I think it was in the Ledger about a new tick disease that's out, that it's worse than Lyme disease because there is no cure for it.
Yeah, I heard that.
Word to the wise, if you're going out, load yourself up with insect repellent, because the other day I took a walk out in the back of my yard and I walked back and I got in the house and about 2 minutes later I found a tick on my hand.
Mm.
So just a word of caution for everybody. And if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
No moves.
Motion to adjourn.
And we have a second.
Question, do we have to open up to general public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Anybody from the, oh, okay, I see your hand up there. Yeah, anybody from the public have anything before we close?
Frank Toda.
Actually, it's his wife, Elizabeth Basile.
Hi, Biz.
Hi, from 16 Upper Kingstown Road.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find out, Catherine, I know I'd sent you an email to forward to the Land Use Board and the attorney, just regarding 2 articles. One was a YouTube video. My concern about the master plan, still having sort of the extension with the cannabis information. So I just wanted to know if there's ever going to be any more discussion about how the master plan had been amended and maybe to go back.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's really concerning because everything always seems to go back and reflects. Everyone says, well, we looked at the master plan, and then everyone says we look at the natural resources inventory. But with that being out there, how can we as Franklin residents know that our water is going to be protected if any cannabis companies come along?
as you know, the state of New Jersey has passed a statute based upon a referendum that has been approved by the voters of the state of New Jersey. Cannabis is legal in the state of New Jersey. So the fact of the matter is that right now the master plan says that it is something that potentially can occur in Franklin Township. That doesn't mean it's going to occur. And right now there's no ordinance, as I understand it, that is going to allow it to occur. So right now there is no difference between what it was prior to the ordinance, strike that, prior to the statute, prior to the referendum, and now. But it is, the master plan is recognizing, as it should, the fact that there are changes that are occurring in state government, in surrounding properties, and in other circumstances. That's what a master plan reexamination does. So it continues to recognize that fact. It does not indicate that there's going to be anything that's going to end up occurring unless and until there's going to be some kind of an ordinance that might be introduced by the governing body. It's my understanding that is not the case as of this point in time. So from the land use board's viewpoint, there's nothing further that needs to take place. It is a recognized situation. Cannabis is permitted in the state of New Jersey, and the land use board, the master plan reexamination report recognizes that fact.
And I hear what you're saying, but because it was passed in the state of New Jersey, and because Franklin is on specifically a well system, it's not apples to apples across the state. And that was my concern. And so I'm just curious, did anyone, I know I sent it to Catherine, but did anyone actually read anything that I sent or think about anything I sent, or is it just a flat out no across the board?
Well, I don't know.
If it's all right, Elizabeth is my neighbor.
Yes.
And Elizabeth, we do get applications at the land use board for uses that use a lot of water. And we had one, it was a fish farm and so what we did is we had them testify regarding their water usage. We brought in an expert from Princeton Hydro to review the situation. And that project did eventually get approval, but not before the water issues were thoroughly reviewed. And we don't have a cannabis ordinance right now, but if we had any use, including cannabis that used a lot of water, this board would be looking at the amount of water used. And that would be part of the criteria for whether or not it gets permitted.
Okay, and also additionally, how you spoke on Monday night regarding the wastewater management systems and just the whole, water issues that are going to get worse as years go by. Will that also always be taken into account? And I just feel like I'm totally new to this area, but with the beauty of the area and the protection or need of protection of the water, I just think I know it's very concerning to me and to many people I've spoken to about the master plan, because the other townships that did not pass an ordinance, they did not keep it in their master plan as being open-ended. And that was my concern. It feels unresolved.
The water issue, what's happening, and this is a good question, Elizabeth. This will affect Franklin Township. It'll affect every municipality in the state of New Jersey. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have an emergency resolution passed by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and they are going to require that projects be designed for climate change. Basically what the findings are is that all of the criteria that we use for stormwater management in terms of rainfall intensity and volume is now obsolete. And it's obsolete right now, and it will get more so going into the future. And all municipalities in the state of New Jersey will have a year to change their ordinances to copy one that the state will publish that changes these standards. And in the meantime, any project that also needs a state approval will immediately have to follow those criteria. So That's going to affect every municipality, including Franklin Township.
Okay, well, I'll just keep an eye on what's going on. I just felt a little concerned and I didn't get any response from the land use board, so I just wanted to ask the question. But thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
All right, let me just, if I may, let me just add on to that.
Mhm.
Back in the 1990s, the zoning basically in town was 3 acres. And the state had come out with a report back then about a problem called nitrate dilution, okay? And basically what it said is if you have a septic system and a well, you're going to be introducing nitrates into the ground, and which could have an impact on your well water. And what they had as part of this report, they had recommendations for lot sizes.
Mhm.
The committee and the board, the land use board at the time, reviewed all of this, and that's why we have the larger lot sizes today, to protect the water and protect your water from being polluted.
Mhm. Yeah, and I actually read the natural resources inventory, so I'm actually happy about the lot sizes and I'm happy with what's been done. I guess my concern was with it being in black and white in the master plan, it just sort of set the stage that things weren't being as researched as I would, as I do. I research things, as John knows, very thoroughly, and I just felt like it was not as specific in the master plan. It was pretty open-ended, and that was my concern as well.
Well, okay, because
Roger, can I just say something? The master plan review was not done at his whim. We had a subcommittee that we met over, I think, 3 months, discussing everything. It wasn't done in a vacuum. There was a subcommittee on the land use board that discussed all these issues. We were going by our planner, discussing things, and it was voted on by the land use board. So it was not done.
And I'm very aware. I've read all the minutes and I've read all the discussions, and the amount of discussion just didn't seem adequate, in my opinion, as compared to the amount of discussion that was done on the other land use board meeting for the house on Sydney Road. So I've read everything that's been put out, and just my concern, again, just as a resident, that it's something sort of like, the rainwater, and they're going to find out in 15 years or 10 years or whatever that, oh, we should have thought this through more thoroughly and done a little more research. So that's where I stand. I'll just keep on top of watching and reading and seeing if any new information comes up. If I'm allowed, I will forward it to the land use board and the township committee, and they can review it and see. Things consistently shift and change. So I'm open to that.
On both sides of that, Elizabeth, on both
Yes,
sides, because
yes,
if
exactly.
you go on the internet, you can find articles for and against. And I'm not saying either one, but we have to also be open-minded to the internet is not the gospel.
I just don't read just the internet, Phil, but yes, I take your suggestion, but I just think everyone needs to be open-minded, and I'm good. That's
Thank you.
all I wanted to do. So that's it.
Who do we have up there, Catherine? Christina?
Hi, Christina Farragella, 205 Sydney Road. I do have a question. It's more of a legal question, just about the mechanics and just sort of how a master plan reexamination amendment works. So a master plan reexamination amendment, is that supposed to be generally consistent with the overarching body of the document? because when I read the master plan reexamination, the parts that describe marijuana use, it doesn't just say, you know, marijuana cultivation has been approved by the state of New Jersey. It goes further and describes a land use review, and it starts to describe permitted cannabis cultivation in specific zones. You know, and the, you know, lot sizes, and makes very specific recommendations. And those specific recommendations are inconsistent, you know, with water use provisions rationalized in the rest of the master plan document. So the master plan reexamination amendment is inconsistent with the rest of the master plan. And this is particularly concerning to residents, because we hear every time you get an application for a resident, you guys like very rigorously assess the impervious coverage, you know, and the lot size and the use of the property, right? But that amendment, that master plan reexamination, made many residents very confused, because all of it, not just the scale of it, the permitted use scale of it was vast. But even if for a single one of those possible uses, it was inconsistent with the rest of the uses in the master plan. So, you know, if you guys are going to keep that in there, I can tell you that we're like, the residents are going to continually question it, because it is inconsistent with the rest of the document. So back to my legal question, is that master plan reexamination supposed to, you know, be in accordance with the rest of the document, with the rest of the master plan in general?
To answer the question, the master plan reexamination report is exactly that. There's a requirement to do a master plan reexamination report at least every 10 years. It can be done shorter, and it ends up, there's a statutory requirement as to what a master plan reexamination includes. And among those things, it has to take into account any changes that have occurred outside of the municipality, such as changes in zoning in surrounding municipalities, such as changes in statutory requirements that have occurred in the state of New Jersey. The master plan takes into account, for example, the fact that there has been over the many years a requirement, excuse me, to recognize the fact that there is an obligation for every municipality to have affordable housing. Most people don't like that in a master plan, but that is a requirement because the state mandates it. The fact of the matter is that there has been, among other things, there's been a change in the status of cannabis in the state of New Jersey based upon not only a referendum, but also a statute. The master plan reexamination report reflects that fact. As Mr. Thonet has already indicated, in the event, we're talking about 3 steps down the road, in the event that there is ever an ordinance that's going to be approved or be introduced by the governing body, that ordinance is going to come before the land use board for consistency at that point. And then if it gets ultimately adopted by the governing body, then an applicant, whoever that may be, will have to come before the land use board, and considerations, particularly as it relates to water and other factors, will also be reviewed by the land use board, as they did and were. And John was fully participating in this discussion in terms of the fish farm. And we do it on all other applications in the township of Franklin. So I do think that the master plan reexamination report was accurate in terms of its duty to reflect the fact of changes that have taken place over the period of time that it was reflective of. So the reality is that that's what the statutory requires of a master plan reexamination report. It did that. And then there's a whole series of other steps that will end up taking place before anything ever occurs, if at all, in Franklin Township.
Okay, thank you.
Roger,
Again,
can you just also reiterate that basically, if in the master plan and if an ordinance is ever adopted and approved, that doesn't preclude any approvals that are going to be the applicant is going to have to be done from this committee.
Yep, no.
Well, that's what I indicated.
Yep. No,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I just, let me just say something real quickly. I did have, as I said to you earlier, and I apologize to all of you, but I did test positive for COVID.
You're doing very well. Yeah.
closing that was only a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
and I'm fading pretty fast.
You're doing
So
okay.
I think I'm going to be excusing myself today and apologizing for leaving a few minutes early, simply because it is now 10 o'clock, and it is now, based upon my COVID timeframe, 2 hours past my bedtime. So on that note, thank you all very much, and I hope I've answered your question, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you so
Feel
much,
better.
Roger. Feel better, Roger. Thank you.
Oh, okay, any other questions from the public? Anybody else there, Catherine?
No, no one else.
Okay, then I'll introduce the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. All right, thank you everyone for participating tonight, and I guess we'll be seeing everybody second week in June.
Congratulations, Catherine.
Yes,
Thank you so
congratulations. Very exciting.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Yep.
Happy Memorial Day, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.